New York University, and we go back 20 years. And it's very exciting to see so many of you here tonight. Again, feel free to start video and show yourselves. It makes it more personal and get to know who I'm talking to, and you guys type in questions in the chat box. So my background, I used to work in undergraduate admissions at New York University. I was there for 5 years, 2 as a student working there as an undergraduate, the junior and senior year of college, and then 3 full-time after college. And then I crossed over to the high school side where I've been director of college counseling at a high school in Riverdale, New York. And I've been there for 14 years. So I have a lot of experience from both sides of the desk. For New York University, I worked particularly with the College of Arts and Science and with the Stern School of Business. So I got to see both liberal arts and business admission perspectives, and in the high school side, working with kids in the arts and education and medicine and social work and business, engineering, all different types of fields. So I like to bring a wealth of experience, but I also like to hear from you guys, and I like to be challenged. So I like to hear questions that are maybe out of the box and things that you're worried about. And what I'm going to talk to you today is about the idea of college research and what does it look like during a pandemic, and how do you narrow down a list of colleges, and what are the things that admission officers will look for. So feel free to type questions in the chat. We'll get to them either during or towards the end, like Francis said, and I will begin. So I like to make this interactive, so feel free to type answers into the chat. My first question for you guys is, how many of you are seniors? Any seniors here? Just type in senior. How many juniors here? Just type in junior. How many sophomores here? Type in sophomore. And how many freshmen here? Type in freshman. And if any middle school, type in middle school. Okay, I'm seeing seniors, juniors, sophomores. Okay, very good. So if you're a senior that's here, it's not too late to hear about the college admission process. If you're a sophomore, junior, it's definitely not too early. So whenever you're in high school learning about what college admissions looks like, it's the right time. So let's talk about what does it look like. So first, when you guys are doing research into college campuses, there are different factors you'll want to consider. So for example, one of them is location. The pandemic, I've noticed at the school where I work, has impacted how people view location. Some students are more excited about being more local, being closer to home. Other students are ready to get the heck away and have that beautiful campus because they are so sick of urban New York City. So you want to think to yourself about location. Are you looking for something that's more urban? New York City, Boston, Philadelphia, DC, where you have a campus really more enmeshed within the city streets, big buildings, maybe fewer green spaces. So urban campuses, there's a lot of stimulation, there is a lot of noise, there's hustle and bustle. Schools that are known for being urban, NYU, BU, GW, you get the constant adrenaline of being in a major city. So urban schools could be something you consider. Some students might look at the complete opposite, schools that are more remote and are in rural areas. Examples could be a school like Cornell or a school like University of Connecticut. So there are schools out there that are a bit more remote, and the campus itself is really the game in town. So if you go to Cornell, for example, you might not be venturing into Ithaca every day. You really have the campus itself as the major experience. And that's for students who might just want to go away and be in an environment where the campus is everything. If you are a summer camp person at sleepaway camp, it's kind of like a sleepaway camp vibe, where the location that you are staying in for 4 years really is your overall home and your entire source of energy. Then students might look for something that's more in the middle, something more suburban. These are campuses that might be, let's say 20, 30, 40 minutes outside of a major city, and kind of gives you the benefit of having access to a major city, but you still have your own campus experience. So a school that might be more suburban could be University of Maryland outside of Washington, DC, could be Brandeis University outside of Boston, Sarah Lawrence College outside of New York City, school like Swarthmore outside of Philadelphia. These are examples of more suburban schools. So a student can have on the list urban schools and suburban schools and rural schools, but sometimes you know yourselves and you might feel like, you know what, I need to be in an urban school, or I need specifically New York City. Or some students might feel like I could be happy anywhere, and I'll have a list that might include urban, suburban, and rural. Another factor for you to consider is the size of the school. So a school that is under 5,000 undergraduates typically is considered smaller sized. Somewhere in the 5,000 to 10,000 is considered medium sized. 10,000 and above is considered large. Benefits to smaller schools. I'm curious what you guys think. If you want to type in the chat, what's the benefit to a smaller school?
And please don't hesitate to use the chat box. Michael Courtney has 25 years of experience now, a lot of time. So use this amazing opportunity. And he himself is a graduate of New York University. So please use this time, type questions into the chat, and please respond into the chat box. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for being here. For those who are just joining in right now, because we just let about a dozen more people in, do you mind very, very quickly just go over your backgrounds and as the students are typing in their answers? All right, and I think we're just about closing up I don't expect many more people to join, but I think this was our last batch.
Sure. So
Oh, sorry. Wait. 1 minute. I made a mistake. Unmute, please. Okay, go ahead.
So I'm a director of college counseling at a high school in Riverdale, New York. Before that, I was assistant director of admissions at New York University, working on their undergraduate admissions committee. All right, so the answers you guys gave about smaller schools, some of the advantages: more personalized attention, absolutely. Individualized classes with extra attention, close-knit community, good. At a smaller school, you might be able to wave to someone and recognize people all the time, wherever you're going. So it could be like a small liberal arts college, Amherst College, Muhlenberg College, Middlebury College. These are smaller schools, and there you're a little bit less anonymous. You are able to be enmeshed within this more intimate community of people who are there because they want to be in a smaller environment and not feel like the constant hustle and bustle of a larger school is appealing. What's the opposite end of the spectrum? What are the advantages to larger universities? I'll give you guys a minute to type in the chat. More resources and programs, absolutely. A plethora of majors, right? More classes within those departments. So at a smaller school, a major might only have 3 or 4 classes. A minor might have only 3 or 4 classes. At a larger university, you might have many more course offerings within a department. What else about a larger school do people find appealing? More extracurriculars, good. Collaborative classes, good. Very often it's connected to really large sports programs, right? Like Michigan, like Rutgers, Wisconsin. Definitely more campus diversity is apparent at larger universities, right? It pulls from a larger population of students, more of an active campus life. Great. Okay, so you guys have good answers here. And those medium-sized universities might be something more in the middle with the access to both the class offerings that are very strong, but also a little bit more intimate than a larger major research university. So examples of those medium size might be Washington University in St. Louis, Emory University, Johns Hopkins University. The public schools, for the most part, tend to be larger in size. Private schools can run the gamut from small to medium to large. Okay. Other factors for admission and what you're looking for when you're researching schools. The most important thing to look for is academics, right? So size is great and location is wonderful, but the real reason you're going to college, why your parents are paying tuition, is for you to get an actual education in classroom. So you want to make sure whatever schools you're researching actually has the programs you're considering. Now, the vast majority of students are undecided. That is the norm. But there are a number of students that have ideas of majors that they want to pursue. So when I used to work at NYU, every year we'd have kids say to me, I want to go to NYU to study fashion. Like, we don't offer fashion. So if that person applied to NYU, got in, and ended up depositing, and then only found out there's no fashion here, what's this all for, right? Or Cooper Union. I had a student say to me once, I want to go to Cooper Union because they have a great creative writing program. No, they don't. They have art, they have architecture, they have engineering. That's it. So make sure academics, you're applying to places, researching places that actually have the programs of interest, okay? When it comes to academics, think a little bit now that's broader. Think about the micro. What does the core curriculum look like? What are the actual types of classes that you're required to take in your first year or two? Because that'll take up a lot of your time in your first few semesters. So it's not just the overall university academics, but also the nuts and bolts. What are the classes you're taking? Are courses taught by research professors who rely on TAs, teacher assistants, to do all the grading and to do discussion groups, or are the classes smaller sized, more seminar style around a long table? These are different types of nuances to consider when searching for school academics. So I would say number one, academics is the reason you're going to college. Location and size are good too. 1A is the actual community that you're going to join. And that means that everyone needs to find their niche. I think the biggest transition to college for students is loneliness. You're going from a high school where you recognize faces around you from class to class to class to class to class. In college, you are totally on your own, creating your own schedule. You might only have one class 9:30 to 10:45, one class 2 to 3:15. In between, you're on your own. You're figuring out your hours. So finding community is a huge part of transition. It might be religious community. It might be intramural sport community. It might be writing for a campus publication. It could be some type of ethnic dance. These are all different types of communities that people need to search for in a college campus. And you need to find that first week. You don't want to wait a few months to join that community because then you'll be very, very lonely and not feeling good about yourself. So yes, you'll find people on your floor, you'll have friends with your roommates, but you need to find what are your commonalities with other people on campus that attract you to going to a club meeting every week or a performance every few weeks. These are things to think about, and you can have multiple communities. When I was in college campus, I was part of student government, and I was part of working in the admissions office, and I was part of a political group on campus. And I had these different groups of friends that I just loved seeing separately. So it's not like in college you have a clique that you're walking around with. It's not like that at all. You have different groups of friends from different types of communities, and you want to make sure the schools that you're researching will have these types of communities that you're considering. Okay, so those are ideas of what to think for in researching colleges. Now, during COVID times, the college search is different. So it used to be that the best way to see a campus was actually visiting the campus. And admission offices would offer information sessions and campus tours all the time, round the clock. They'd have in-person open houses. Now it's not really possible. So now they actually have really professional virtual tours. That is a great way to get to see a campus. Keep in mind, it tends to be a really nice fall or spring day. It's very rarely the blizzardy virtual tour. So University of Michigan is not always gorgeous with green trees. It does snow a lot there. Same with Binghamton, it rains a lot there, it snows there. So you have to take the visit with a grain of salt. The idea is a virtual tour. You can get a sense of what just the campus looks like rather than just a picture in a prospectus magazine sent your way. But something I recommend is if you live within driving distance of a school, I would go one day and just drive there. Even now, wear your masks, walk around on your own. You won't be let into buildings. There are no info sessions campus tours now. But I've had students drive to Rutgers an hour away and just loved it because it was more than just pixels on a computer screen. They're able to see what College Avenue looked like and where the classrooms are located, where the football stadium's located. Sometimes just seeing it in person can get you excited. So I would suggest also doing this because whatever you're able to see can help supplement any supplemental essays you do have to write later on, which I'll talk about. So the idea is that when you do research on a school, that informs the essays you have to write for those colleges because they do have particular essays for different schools, okay? So researching schools during COVID, not the same, right? You're not able to go left and right, visit 8 schools in 4 days with info sessions and campus tours and meet admission personnel and students, but you can still actually see the lay of the land. And in some schools, there are students walking around. You could just piggyback off of a student walking to class and just ask that person a question, and they'll probably be happy to speak to you. Just give them distance and wear your mask. So we have students visiting campuses right now, even during this time, being very careful about it, as long as it's in driving distance and it's not a state that is on the travel ban list. So that's something to consider. Also, when it comes to researching schools, you want to join the admissions mailing list of any school you're interested in. So what does that mean? If you Google Boston University admissions mailing list, it'll take you to a page where you fill out a form on the website, and then you're on the mailing list. So you will get emails and you'll get other information from them. It's important because some schools track something called demonstrated interest. They look to see that you're showing that you're interested in their school. And it used to be you could track demonstrated interest by visiting campus and filling out the forms at the admissions offices. Not so feasible anymore. So the idea of actually being able to get these admission materials, read through them, you'll be able to be on their mailing list and you're able to actually use these as answers for supplemental essays. The other thing to know about researching schools is that some schools will let you interview with them in advance. There are a number of colleges that will only let you interview after you apply and they'll invite you to an interview, which is typically conducted by an alum. But some schools, Washington University in St. Louis is an example, you can actually sign up for an interview even towards the end of second semester junior year. And this is a really good way to show interest in a school, that you've actually done the optional interview. So any questions so far, I guess, Francis, should I stop for a minute to see if there are questions on college research, on Before I go into factors of admission, college research during COVID, things that are on your minds, and feel free to just.
And I do want to encourage everyone to type any questions they have into the chat. Michael Courtney has years of experience and he's very transparent, extremely informative. So please don't hesitate to ask any questions with the chat and just be comfortable. All right, so go right ahead.
And also, while you are thinking of questions to type or ask, Jade has a question about virtual tours. Do they include more opportunities to sit in on classes if admitted? That depends on the school. Some schools are very open to having kids sit in on classes as prospective students, both in person like they did in the past, now virtual. Other schools, if admitted. So it depends on the school. You'd have to reach out to their admissions office to see how you can sit in on classes. Great question. Got a question about any good computer science schools near New York, New Jersey. So here's the thing, computer science has become so popular that every major university in the area is really, really pumping a lot of funding into computer science departments because they are so in vogue right now. They're so important. So I wouldn't say Columbia is more known for computer science than NYU. Both are great. Rutgers, I mean, if you think in New York, New Jersey, there are a lot of opportunities, the CUNY schools. So I don't know if any one school is known for computer science more. They're all getting pretty strong because they're such popular majors now. Because colleges are not looking at test scores, what aspects of the application will they focus on more? I will answer that question when I go over factors of admission, but what you're saying is just not true. No one's saying colleges are not looking at test scores. Colleges are saying that for seniors, they have the option to go test optional. However, very high testing for those seniors can still help. It is only CUNY and very few other schools that are completely test blind. How early should one start reaching out to schools? I would say junior year is a good time if you want to reach out, for example, for interviewing. If you want to do a virtual tour, you don't have to reach out. You can just sign up on the website as a freshman, as a sophomore. Elaborate on college apps. What are they? So are you talking about college applications like the Common App, Coalition App? I can go over that in just a bit. Question I got privately, legacy admissions edge for parents, undergrad only, for donors only, parents, grad schools, grandparents, colleges. Legacy is defined as having a family relationship that different schools will look at differently. Some schools will say that is parents and grandparents. Some schools will say siblings. Some schools will say aunts, uncles, cousins, depends on the school. For the most part, it is undergraduate. There are some schools that will be okay with graduate school legacy. Donors is totally different. Donors means that
2 kids.
Donors mean, oh, hi Francis. Donors means that there's legacy, and there's legacy with a history of giving. A legacy with a history of giving is a stronger form of legacy. So there's different type of donating also. If you're a development case, which means you're able to pay a certain fee to help your chances for admission, that is separate from legacy. Any special advice for specialized high school students? So it's interesting because if you go to Bronx High School Science or Hunter College High School or Stuyvesant High School, you're getting a phenomenal education. You're also competing with a lot of kids who are really, really strong. So extracurricular achievement and involvement and community engagement is going to be really important for you, in addition to strong testing and academics. And also take your college counselor's advice with which schools to apply, especially which schools to apply early. We'll talk about those early deadlines soon. But the idea is that you are competing with a pool of people that are very strong. So it could be some schools will only have 1 or 2 applicants from your high school. Other colleges might have 50. So take the advice of your school counselor. Those are the questions so far. Okay, so let me go over some important terms when it comes to the admission process. Who here has heard of early decision and wants to tell me what they think that means? Francis, can that person call it out or should they only type it in the chat? You're on mute, Francis, sorry.
Sorry, what was that last part?
Can I call on someone to call out or should they only type it in the chat?
If they can, I think it's better if they type in the chat. It's just because the unmute and stuff is a little tricky. Okay. But yeah, if they're able to just go into the chat, that would be so great.
Okay, so Jessica Lee, you answered it. Binding contract. So what does that mean? It means that if a student wants to apply to a school that's a first choice school, so they've done their research on that institution, they know that if offered admission, they definitely want to go there, they have an edge in admission, they have a better chance of getting in. It tends to be, it's mostly private schools that offer early decision. So it's for a student who knows that by November 1st, they have all their testing done, they have the grades they need for end of junior year because they don't have first semester marking periods to show them. They know that they have done their financial aid paperwork in advance. There is something called a net price calculator that parents can look up for any university financial aid website that can give you a sense of what an aid contract, an aid package can look like. So when it comes to early decision, you know that if offered admission, that's the school you want to go to. Tends to be a lot of private schools. So for the most competitive schools, Columbia has it, Penn, Cornell, University of Chicago, Washington University in St. Louis, Brown. These are schools that have early decision. Okay. I have a question privately. Does SUNY CUNY participate in early decision? No. Public institutions do not participate in early decision. Okay. So, and also, yes, you must withdraw your other applications should you get into your early decision school. Who here has heard of early decision 2 and can tell everyone what that means? So I just spoke about early decision, which also can be thought of as early decision 1. About early decision 2? I have a question about which schools have EA. I'll answer that shortly. So early decision 2, as you guys are thinking about the answer, is for students who maybe didn't get in elsewhere in ED1, and they want to have a second chance at getting into a school where they're in a much smaller applicant pool and have a better chance of getting in. So ED2 tends to be a January 1st deadline, and colleges let you know in mid-February, as opposed to when regular decisions release in late March. So if a student maybe isn't ready to apply to a school by November 1st, they might do early decision 2. Or if a student, let's say, applies to Columbia early decision and wasn't offered admission, they might do NYU early decision 2. So it's for students who realize, you know what, I don't want to be considered in a highly selective admission pool and regular decision where there are many more thousands of applicants. I prefer to take another stab at early decision through early decision 2. Not every private school has early decision 2. Examples of some prominent ones include UChicago, NYU, Emory, Vanderbilt, Washington University in St. Louis. This year, Johns Hopkins added it. None of the Ivies have early decision 2, but a lot of very competitive schools will have ED2 as an offering. Who here has their early action and can tell us what that means? Give you guys a second to type. Okay, so early action means that it's for typically, it's mostly public institutions that offer it. There are some exceptions. But early action means you apply by an earlier deadline, typically around November 1st. But if offered admission, you're not bound to go to that school. Okay, so what that means is that, let's say you want to do Binghamton. You have a better chance of Binghamton early action than you do if you apply regular decision. And if you're applying to an out-of-state school like University of Michigan, if you miss that early action deadline, you are not getting in, okay? Take my advice. For any state school, make sure to look at their early action deadline to have a better chance of getting in. Now, if you are relying on first semester grades, then for in-state options, you could do a later deadline. But you should not be applying to Maryland, regular decision. You should not be doing Michigan, regular decision. These are early action schools. They have out-of-state and in-state quotas they have to fulfill from the state government to get funding. So be sure to do early action. You can do multiple early actions. You can only do one early decision. So it's kind of like, think of early action as dating. An early decision, you're committing to marriage. So you could do Binghamton, University of Massachusetts, Amherst, and Rutgers all at the same time. You couldn't do Columbia and Penn early decision. That's not possible. You can do one early decision with multiple early actions, but if admitted to the early decision school, you withdraw all the other applications. So it's very common in this school where I work, when a student applies early decision, they're also doing a Binghamton and early action. They're also doing Michigan early action, okay? So early action tends to be more of the public institutions. There are some exceptions, University of Miami, Tulane, Northeastern, UChicago, they offer ED and EA, which is interesting. Is there a cheat sheet on who does early decision versus early action? It's a good question, Jade. I don't know if there's a cheat sheet, you can Google it, see if they list all early decisions versus early actions, but try to think of, for the most part, privates, early decision, publics, early action, with some exceptions. Question, how would a school like Columbia know that you applied early decision 2 to NYU? Your school counselor is not going to let you apply to multiple early decision 1 schools or multiple early decision 2 schools. They're only sending your transcript and rec letters to one ED1 school or to one ED2 school if you didn't get in to the ED1. Okay? So you can't apply to multiple schools ED1, you can't apply to multiple schools ED2. You can do multiple early actions, and you can do many regular decisions. Okay? Other questions I'm seeing so far. I heard that you apply ED but able to withdraw because of family's funding. Is that true? It is very crushing to a kid to get their heart set on a school ED, only to find out that after being admitted, they couldn't afford it. What you should be doing is, prior to applying, check the net price calculator on that school's financial aid website. So let's say NYU is a school you're considering, Google NYU net price calculator, and parents should fill out that calculator based on the prior year's incomes, and NYU is going to throw back what a sample financial aid package could look like. If they say you're not getting any financial aid, but you feel like you really need financial aid, that's not the right school to apply to early decision. Or let's say you need $50,000 of aid, and they're saying based on the calculations, we'll give you $25,000 of aid. That's not the right school to apply early decision. Because early decision means you need to be able, if you're in financial need, you need to compare multiple aid packages to determine how schools will be affordable for you. Okay? Any suggestions for applying to schools in Canada? Yes, Canada has regular decision deadlines. You apply by January. McGill, University of Toronto, University of British Columbia, Western, these are great schools. Do research to see which programs appeal to you more, which region within Canada appeals. Canada is significantly cheaper than the privates in the United States. It's mostly public institutions, okay? Does early action give financial breakdown? So here's the thing. When you apply to any schools early, whether early decision or early action, you can submit something called the prior FAFSA. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. So right now it's November. And what that means is that if someone from my class of 2021, these seniors, will apply to school's November 1st deadline, starting October 1st, so I've had families do this the last month and a half, parents can fill out information based on their 2019 taxes, hence it's called prior, because their kids are class of 2021. And if offered admission, they would get a sample financial aid package based on 2019 income. In January of 2021, they would still need to file the official 2020 financial aid numbers from the FAFSA. And if 2019 and 2020 were reasonably accurate and comparable, that would be their official financial aid package. A lot of families might be earning less in 2020 as a result of the pandemic. So 2019 tax numbers might not be that revelatory, in which case you can contact the financial aid offices of schools of interest, let them know your circumstances to see if they can give you the right aid to make it work, okay? Advice for students looking into NYU Tisch, creating a portfolio, etc. Yes, there are many schools out there that have artistic elements, whether it's audition-based, such as theater, such as instrument performance, or it could be artistic-based based on a writing portfolio or a art portfolio. Advice, typically admissions will look at half academic, half artistic. So they're looking at both strength in their studies, but also the artistic side. And when it comes to the portfolio audition, you got to nail it. You're competing with talented applicants. You got to do the best that you can. Okay. Merit scholarship for early action. Yes, there are schools that give merit scholarship. In order to get merit scholarship, first you have to remember not every school gives merit scholarship. The Ivies don't give merit scholarship. There's no such thing. It's only need-based awards. But schools that give merit scholarship is for students who are at the higher end of the middle 50% that they report. What do I mean? Colleges will report, and you can Google this just now if you want, George Washington University, middle 50% SAT, ACT. Tulane University, middle 50% SAT, ACT. And they'll say something like, our middle 50% of admitted students fall between a 1380 and a 1470. So who's getting the merit scholarships? Those kids at the higher end of those numbers. Middle 50% means 25% of the admitted students are above, let's say 1470, 25% of admitted students are below that 1350. So merit scholarships are for kids at the higher end of testing and higher end of the GPA, okay? Let me go into now, what are some of the I mentioned ED1, ED2, EA. Regular decision is the application deadline that is typically the most common. It's the largest applicant pool for students applying by January for most colleges, and you find out late March. Then there's something called restrictive early action, which is only offered by Harvard, Yale, Stanford. It used to be Princeton until this year. Princeton, because of COVID, decided not to offer restrictive early action. Restrictive early action means you apply to a school early, such as Harvard, Yale, Stanford, but you cannot do that with an early decision. So whereas a regular early action school, such as the University of Texas in Austin, would allow you to apply there and Columbia early decision. If you want to do Yale restrictive early action, you cannot also do Brown early decision. It's restricting where else you can do an early application. Okay, so if you're offered admission to Harvard, Yale, Stanford, because it's not early decision, the offer is not binding. You don't have to go there. But I would tell you, most people offered admission to Harvard, Yale, Stanford tend to take them up on it. Okay, those are different application deadlines, different application terms that you'll hear out there. So let's talk about, in this era of COVID, what are colleges looking for? So the first thing at college campuses look for, admission officers are looking for transcript. That's the first and foremost. The transcript is your collection of courses and grades. It's 4 years worth of courses, 3 years worth of grades. If you're applying anywhere early decision, some schools might ask for first quarter grades, which means how you're doing the first 2 months of the school year. Otherwise, all schools will see your first semester transcript senior year, and wherever you ultimately matriculate, that one school will get your final transcript. So the transcript is the collection of your courses. So that means some high schools will look at curricular rigor in terms of International Baccalaureate, IB program. Other schools may offer honors classes, advanced placement courses, APs, dual enrollment with other colleges. So the idea is that colleges don't just look at your grades in a vacuum, they look at it within the context of the curricular rigor of your school. So if you go to a high school, for example, where I work, we limit students to no more than 4 APs. That means the most selective schools will anticipate our applicants will have 4 APs. They can't apply with 1 or 2 APs, they're not as competitive. Or if you apply to schools and if you go to high schools where, let's say, no APs are offered, but there are honors offered, the more competitive schools will expect you to take as many of the honors offerings as possible. Okay, so when it comes to the curricular offerings, you need to maximize what your high school has to offer if you're considering the more selective schools. I like what Francis sometimes says to me, what if I want to take Algebra 1, Pre-Algebra 1, Pre-Pre-Algebra 1, Pre-Pre-Algebra 1 as my 4 years of math? That's not going to work for a very selective school. Francis, I love that line. I think it's great. They're looking for geometry, Algebra 2, Pre-Calculus, AP Calculus. That's a more strong math curriculum, okay? Sciences, they're looking at bio and chem and physics and maybe an AP in one of them or multiple APs depending on your school. Same with history. There's US history, world history, AP US history, AP world or AP European history. These are types of things that they're noting when it comes to your curricular rigor. So they're looking at the rigor and they're also looking at the grades. So some schools might offer a GPA, a grade point average. Your schools might report unweighted or weighted. Colleges tend to unweight GPAs and look at what the actual grades are. And separately, they'll consider the actual rigor of the curriculum. So when it comes to your transcript, the GPA is also not in a vacuum. They're looking at the progression. Maybe someone had a couple B's freshman year, and then they had straight A's sophomore year and junior year. These are things colleges note. Or maybe you had an amazing freshman year. Maybe you had a rough sophomore year because you lost a parent or because you had to have major surgery. These are things that the colleges would need to know to explain those circumstances in the context of your application. And then let's say you recovered junior year. So these are things that they'll note in the application. They don't want to see that downward spiral from amazing freshman to good sophomore to terrible junior. They want to see an upward trend, or if you actually started off really strong, you continue that, unless there are circumstances to explain. I'll tell you something interesting is that this year, the college applications added a section on COVID-19 and how it impacted you. This is an interesting part of the application because colleges aren't looking to see the pandemic has been hard. I really don't enjoy virtual learning. Okay, that's you and a million people. What they're looking to see is maybe you lost someone. Maybe you yourself have suffered through the illness. Maybe your mental health has been compromised and now you're on the mend months later. But the idea is that they're not looking to see the COVID-19 section filled out just by saying it's been really hard being on Zoom school. They know that, okay? That section is also useful if maybe you picked up some extracurricular during the pandemic that you hadn't done before. I have a number of my students who call senior citizens every Friday afternoon, and they do it every week without fail for half an hour. That's something they maybe, or they Zoom with them. That's something they maybe wouldn't have done beforehand, but now they know that the homebound seniors are more lonely than ever, and being able to connect with them virtually is something worth doing. So the idea of transcript is that you can explain any quirks within the transcript on your application, either in the COVID-19 section. There's also an additional information section on the application where you can explain anything. It doesn't have to be COVID related. All right, so transcript is the most important feature of the admission process. Second most important historically has been standardized testing. This year for the seniors, a lot of schools, like I said before, are test optional. However, very high testing can only help you. So let's talk. Let's say the 5 major factors I'm going to talk about tonight are transcript, standardized testing, extracurricular activities, recommendation letters, and essay. Okay? In years past, it would be 20%, 20, 20, 20, 20, let's just say, to give you 100% and get offered admission. Let's say you get rid of testing. That means they're prioritizing 25, 25, 25, 25. Let's say you already have really high testing, you're already at 20 for 20. Okay? So you have a little bit of an edge when it comes to the admission process. The murky part of this entire process is that we don't know what testing is going to look like for juniors, sophomores, and freshmen. So I'm telling my juniors that because colleges haven't announced test optional for class of 2022, you need to prepare for standardized testing. And let's say you prepare and all these colleges go test optional, good news. If you do really well, that's only going to help out your application. So if you are someone who's a really poor tester, you still might want to go through test prep in case they do require it. However, if in the end they go test optional, at least you tried, and at least you know that, you know what, I gave it my best, it didn't work, but I'm able to have this crutch. But we just don't know yet if they're going to go test optional. If you're a senior, it's a bit late for testing, but if you have testing that's above that middle 50%, it's in the higher end for schools, that's worth submitting. And if you have testing that's on the lower end of the middle 50% or below it, maybe it's not worth submitting. All right. When it comes to testing, colleges don't have a preference of SAT or ACT. It used to be the ACT was more tied to Midwestern applicants. It used to be SAT was more of an East Coast, West Coast phenomenon. Colleges realized we just want high scores. It makes us look better with US News and World Report and with other publications. So what that means is that you want to consider SAT or ACT based on your strengths. They are different tests. Kweller Prep can go over with you what are those nuances. So for example, the ACT math is slightly more advanced. The SAT verbal reading passages are slightly more sophisticated. There are always differences between the tests. The ACT is more of a time crunch, has this additional science section. So these are things you want to research. Don't just take the SAT on a whim and say, this is my test. See if the ACT is a better test for you and vice versa. When it comes to standardized testing, the schools give you a feature called score choice. So some schools will say, send us everything. We'll help you sort out what to send. You still have score choice. So what that means is that when you register, it's going to say to you, the College Board or ACT will say, oh, you can send your scores for free to 4 schools right now if you sign up. Don't do that. Then you lose your score choice. It's worth paying that fee senior year, knowing what you could send versus what you're protecting. When it comes to SAT, ACT, colleges mostly don't require the writing section. There are some exceptions, like West Point, for example. If anyone's looking to the US Military Academy, they do require it. But the writing section I only think about if you're really an exceptional writer and you're able to showcase that strength, great, but most colleges aren't prioritizing it. They're prioritizing the other sections. In addition to SAT, ACT, other standardized tests can include SAT subject tests. Those took a back seat for this year's seniors because all the spring exams were canceled for the juniors. They might resurface as important considerations in the future. If I had to predict for engineers especially, having physics or chemistry and having math too will be especially helpful. SAT subject tests measure a student's proficiency in a particular subject, but only taught at the higher level. So if you're in a lower level math, taking an SAT subject test out of 800 and you getting a 530 isn't going to help you. So it should be that you're at the higher tracking and you're doing well and you have preparation for subject tests. Now people will say, what's the reason I have to prepare for an SAT or ACT? My answer is this: if you are an actor about to go on stage for a performance, did you practice for months before? Yes. If you are an athlete who is going to have a big game, did you practice for months before? Yes. So when it comes to test prep, you need to prepare. Now, it might be with a company like Kweller Prep. Some kids might have the motivation to do it on their own individually. It takes a special kid. Most people need that extra help. Some people might take advantage of different resources that are out there from different types of websites. But I would say when it comes to test prep, you have to know yourself, know your strengths and your limitations. Most kids do need that extra help on the side. So I do recommend getting test prep and whatever financial structure works for your family and whichever timing structure works for your family as well. In addition, standardized testing can include advanced placement tests. Colleges care more about the grade at the end of the year than the actual score that you get in the test. However, let's say you got an A on the class and you got a 5 in the AP exam. That 5 confirms your aptitude for the subject. Let's say you got a B for the year on multiple APs, but you got 5s in the AP exams. That can tell a school, you know what, the teachers might be pretty tough graders, but look how smart the student is. Look how capable they are in these subjects. So the AP exams do have that importance. They also give college credit, and students can have advanced standing credits, or they can be placed into higher level courses. Standardized testing for some schools might be the IB, International Baccalaureate exams. So not every school has that, but that is typically a higher level, 5, 6, or 7 are scores that look good. For APs, 4s and 5s are preferable. So I spoke about 2 major factors in admission, and those are transcript and standardized testing. Everything else is going to be a bit secondary to those 2. So it's almost like having transcript and standardized testing gives you the chips to play poker. Okay, you're able to sit at the table because you have those chips. Doesn't mean you're winning the hand, but all it means is that you are able to play. You have the cards. Okay. Beyond these 2, I wouldn't say there's a ranking of what's most important versus next, but I would say extracurricular activities, pretty important. And in a COVID year, the activities chart is going to look different on people's applications. You might have had sustained commitments for 2.5 years, and juniors in the spring had to not do a spring sport they were used to doing, or there are activities that they had done before that just totally ceased because of the pandemic. So colleges aren't expecting students to now have 4 years of linear extracurriculars. They're expecting things that used to be multi-year commitments to maybe be a year or 2 here. Then you did this during the pandemic year. Maybe you picked up that thing after. It's going to look a little bit different. What I heard someone from University of Chicago say was, this is the time to think of what are your individual interests? Art, music. Do you want to read as many fantasy literature novels out there? Do you want to read as many biographies out there? Have you want to take an online course? For example, Coursera will offer a plethora of opportunities, courses in different subject areas that could be of interest. So maybe you've always wanted to take a psychology class, but your high school doesn't offer it. This is what COVID is allowing you to do, pursue these individual interests that maybe you didn't have the chance to before. Extracurriculars run the gamut. They could be athletics. Maybe you're a captain of a team, or you're a player on a team, or a backup on a team. Maybe you are involved in publications. You're a writer or editor for the school newspaper, for a yearbook, for a science magazine, whatever that may be. Maybe you're a thespian. You're either an actor, actress on stage, or you do tech behind the scenes. Maybe you're involved in community service, either through a club in school or on your own. They're all different things that extracurriculars entail. For the most competitive schools, they're looking for the what else. They're looking for that change agent status. How do you separate? What is your power? What have you done beyond the scope of the norm? So I'll give you an example. I have a student who is a very good ice skater, and he's an ice hockey player. And he taught students in Harlem without access to hockey coaching how to skate. That's going beyond the norm of an extracurricular that he enjoyed and taking it to the community. Or I have a student who read to homeless children at a shelter every single week. Another student who interacted with domestically abused women. I have a student who taught dance at an inner city school in Yonkers that had to cut their arts funding, and she taught dance for free once a week. So the idea is, for the most selective schools, it's not just you're involved in these activities, it's the what else. You're going to say to me, my kid is only 17, my kid's only 16, they don't know. And I'll answer you, that's okay. Not every kid has to go to an Ivy League also. That's just the reality. But if you are looking for the most competitive schools, they are expecting that what else factor. They're expecting significant leadership and students who are change agents, who've gone beyond the pale of, I'm doing this club in school and that club in school, and this one thing on Saturday morning at my synagogue or church, whatever that might be. They're looking for people who really express an interest in community engagement on a multi-year level at a significantly high commitment. So in addition to extracurricular activities, other factors include the college essay and supplemental essays. So the way to apply to schools, most schools are on something called the Common App. The Common Application is it's basically an application vehicle that allows you to apply to many schools at once using one generic website, commonapp.org. And on the Common App, you basically can apply to many schools using the same essay and the same extracurricular activity chart, same basic demographic data. However, schools will have individual essays to those schools. So it might be, for example, Boston University, 250 words or less, has an essay, why do you want to go to BU? Barnard has multiple supplemental essays, Barnard College in the city. One of them is pick a woman in history you want to have a conversation with. Why her, and what do you want to talk about? A lot of schools will have an essay might be, why do you want to study X at the university that you're interested in? Or other schools might have pick a community that you were part of in high school. Why was that community important to you? So you have these supplemental essays that are particular to each school. Common App is one way to apply to schools. The Coalition application is a separate application vehicle that has basically a philosophy of only including schools that are either significantly cheaper for in-state students or schools that tend to meet full financial need. So NYU, Brandeis, a few other schools that you might normally see on Common App are not on Coalition App for that reason. So we actually recommend Common App over Coalition App when given the choice between the two. Then there are schools that have their own websites. MIT has its own website. The Canadian schools, McGill has its own website. So that's something to pay attention to, the actual websites. What is unifying is typically one essay will work for a bunch of these schools. So that's the main Common App essay. That's the one people perseverate over for months. It shouldn't take you months to write it. There are many different essay prompts that are included, such as a significant experience in your life and why, a time where you challenged a belief, what did you challenge and why, a time maybe that you failed and what did you learn from it, your transition from childhood to adulthood, what was that experience like, and a topic of your choice. So you choose one essay, it's 500 to 650 words, 650 is the maximum, you get cut off if you try to exceed that. And the essay should showcase a side of you that they wouldn't necessarily see elsewhere in the application. A big mistake people make on their college essay is they literally do a resume rewrite. Paragraph 1, I did this extracurricular activity and here's why it was important to me. Paragraph 2, I did that activity and here's why it's important. Paragraph 3, I then did that activity. Colleges don't want to see that. They see your activities chart, they'll know what the activities resume looks like. However, if you have one activity that you have a story from within that you want to share, that's what the essay is all about. So the idea is that the essay, it's almost like tell a story, draw them in with a really captivating opening sentence. Because you have to remember, these admission people might be reading 50 to 100 essays in a day. And if you're catching someone at 8 p.m. when they're exhausted and you're dulling them in the first paragraph, they might just skim the rest of your essay and really not give it full look. So I would say really captivating opening sentence to entice them to read a really enthralling opening paragraph, to convince them to read the rest of the essay. You have to rope them in right away. It's not your typical intro, body, conclusion narrative that you've written for many different English classes. You have some freedom here, but just make sure you open with a really compelling way to get them in, and that you don't try to think that I do the cliche of, and the life lesson I learned was this. Don't do that. They don't want to see it. Okay. So the idea is that you want to be original. You want to try to think to yourself, what is my story that I want to tell? And don't look at a bunch of college essay websites and try to replicate someone else's experience. It's very hard. So think of your own experience, whether it's through a great extracurricular that you're involved with, a relationship with a family member or a friend. Maybe there is a certain subject you're really interested in and there's a unique reason behind it. I had a student who was a unicyclist a few years ago, wrote about the really alluring aspect of unicycling. I've never seen an essay like that in my entire life. I thought that was so cool. I had a student who wrote about doing community theater with seniors and what was it like working with a woman in her 80s criticizing you. There's a moment in time to capture, right? The student had many other activities. He didn't just write activity 1, activity 2, activity 3. He went into depth about that one experience. Next, I mentioned before extracurricular activities. I didn't talk about summer. So here's the thing. If you have an amazing activities resume during the year, you don't have to feel like you have to do something in the summer to save the world. The summer activity isn't going to matter as much to the colleges as the activities you do during the school year. And what's the reason for that? Because think about it. If you're going to a college campus, you're balancing your activities with your academics. So that's what they're looking to see you do in high school. You're not just in the library all day, every day as a high school student, you're engaging with community also. Now, summer where it can be helpful, maybe you are looking into the sciences and you're looking to have research published and you're doing research in the summer. That's great. Or some schools really care if you've done their summer program, it does help your chances for admission. So doing a summer course in that school is helpful. I would tell you, my opinion, colleges are most impressed with students who work in the summer. They're looking to make money. It could be as a busboy or bus girl in a restaurant. It could be as a barista at Starbucks. It could be as a camp counselor. It could be as someone who's worked in a movie theater. They're not looking to see that you've done community service in Central America. They prefer you to do community service locally in New York, actually. But they are impressed with people who work, who value money, who value savings, who value contributing to their family income. So that's something to consider. Okay, so next thing to talk about would be recommendation letters. So everyone should request from a school official, which could be a school counselor, could be an associate principal, could be someone else who writes for you beyond the classroom, plus 2 in-classroom teachers. Colleges best appreciate English, history, math, science, foreign language. Those are considered the 5 academic subjects: English, history, math, science, foreign language. So you might have a wonderful relationship with your PE teacher, but that should not be one of your academic recommendation letters. You want to have 2 junior teachers, or most schools will allow 1 junior and 1 sophomore. They do not allow for 2 sophomore teachers. They don't want a freshman teacher. So the idea with recommendation letters is you want to think about who are the people with whom you develop a really good in-classroom rapport. You participate in the class, you ask great questions. You might stay after class to ask questions of the teacher. You're engaged in intellectual discourse. Maybe if you struggled at first, you brought it up. So maybe you had a B+ first semester, A- second semester, you finished strong. So the idea is that everyone should think about who are these 2 teachers they want to ask, and ask before the summer, because a lot of teachers do like to write in the summer. Another factor that isn't as important is the college interview. I say it's not as important because it's not conducted by the admission committee. For the most part, it's alum or alumna. And the idea with the college interview is that a really superb interview, it can help. It's a nice write-up that the interviewer puts in the person's admission profile. A really poor interview can hurt. Why should you have a poor interview if you come across as someone who is not open to diversity? Someone who's not interested in engaging with roommates and floor mates who are different from them? Someone who's not going to contribute to the classroom environment? So don't let that be you. It is okay to be reserved, but you can practice. They don't come across as shy. You come across as someone who's a little more confident and able to express how they would be classroom leaders as well. So just like you practice for a test, you practice for a sporting event, you practice for a play, practice for your interview as well. Finally, a factor in admissions that's not as relevant as others, but still matters for some students: being a recruited athlete or musician, being a legacy, being an underrepresented population, being a development case, being a recruited musician. These are different things that are factors. That's not the reason you get in. Development you can get in if you donate enough millions, but it's not the reason you get in for most other factors, but it's something else that goes along with the rest of your application. So I just went over a bunch of things, and I want to take time for questions. So Francis, I'm gonna start looking at the chat and start piggyback off of some of the questions here. And if I missed something, let me know. Question is, do any Bsmd programs accept early decision? So Brown, for example, allows you to apply for their early decision combined medical program, but if not admitted to that combined program, you could still be admitted to general Brown, which could be an easy take for most people. So you just have to look to see if they have that, where it's the combined medical, and perhaps they also give you the general admission if not admitted to the combined program. Next question is, if you perform poorly on the SAT, can colleges see, or do you have the option not to submit the score? You have score choice. You can choose what you want to send them from your College Board account or from your ACT account, or what you want to self-report on your application. So you don't have to report anything you don't want to, okay? Let's say, I got a question privately, let's say you don't qualify for need-based aid. Are schools more generous on merit scholarship? They might be. Schools tend to be offer merit scholarship because they want to entice kids who might otherwise not matriculate there because maybe they're too strong for that school. So they give merit scholarship to kids who are on the higher end of their middle 50% SAT with high grades, regardless of what the need-based package would look like. Any good summer programs or summer schools sophomores can do. There are many cool things out there. Penn, for example, has a really neat sports management program in the summer. Barnard has a really cool women leadership program. Cornell University are a bunch of courses you could take. Columbia has really neat shape engineering programs. So you have to do your research on what the programs of interest to your academic interests are to see what's out there. SAT subject test, if you did bad on it, could you able to not send that one, but send rest of scores? Great question, Jessica. Yes. From your SAT subject test roster of what you've taken, you can pick and choose what you want to send and what you don't want to send. Next question, if financial need is not the overarching need, what is your take on taking the PSAT and prep for it? So PSAT is interesting. So the PSAT is a test that for juniors, if you score high enough, you could be considered for potential National Merit Scholarship finalist status, in which case there are a number of schools that can give you merit scholarship should you accept their offer of admission. You could prepare for it. I wouldn't spend thousands on that the way I would in an actual SAT though, okay? A private question here, could the COVID essay be used for showcasing community service as student provided rather than the negatives it had on you? Absolutely. You can use the COVID essay to talk about all the service you've done because you were so inspired by what you saw around you and how you wanted to make the community a better place. Yes. Okay, so I got a question privately. How do kids, oh, chat box just moved. How do kids leverage college classes if no other extracurriculars? There should never be no other extracurriculars. If you're a sophomore or junior, get moving on this right away. It should never be you have nothing, but you've done some classes on the side. There will be colleges that admit you. The more competitive schools are expecting extracurriculars, okay? What about being a member of National Honor Society? So here's a question for Reed, that's a good question. Colleges, when they see your activities chart, are gonna see hours per week and weeks per year that you're devoted to a club. So if you're part of a club that just meets an hour a week for half the year, that's not going to be as impressive as a club where you have maybe a leadership position and you have to spend more hours on that club. So if you're just a member of NHS, that's nice. The question is, are you on the executive board of NHS? Are you involved in their service programming? That's going to matter more to them. If students have accommodations, James, good question. Do colleges hold it against them? They don't know if you have accommodations. You are protected by the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. So colleges will not know if you had extra time. Next, does a paid internship work? Do admission officers like to see paid internship experiences? Yes. Whether it's a paid job or a paid internship or an unpaid internship, these are examples of good engagement and being involved with extracurriculars. Question I got privately, with schools being remote, it is hard for students to have that personal relationship with their teachers. Advice, that is a great question. Think of this almost like office hours. Professors have office hours in colleges that are optional that you can go to or you don't have to go to. It could be that in the Zoom classes, there's not much room for class participation because teachers don't invite it and it's more lecture style. If that's the case, you can offer to meet with the teacher and don't offer to meet with them every other day. But maybe once a month, you just want to catch up with them on a subject and engage in conversation. That's the way to establish that relationship, okay? Next question, what about sports scholarships? Any guidance for soccer? Priya, good question. So to be a recruited athlete, that is more than just a senior phenomenon. It starts a bit earlier, and that includes also having footage of your games and sending that over to schools in time. I would encourage you to speak to your athletic director at your school to talk more about what does that entail for your school and what students have done before from your school, and maybe which colleges they have better connections with. Question I got privately, would an AP score of 3 be disadvantageous? So there are a number of colleges like Binghamton, for example, that accept a number of 3s. So for those types of schools, if they accept it, you could put it on the application. Otherwise, I would recommend 4s and 5s. Do I know of an actuarial science summer program? I can't think of any offhand, Lana. It's a good question. Maybe Google it, see what comes up. I just don't know the answer to that. Question privately, can you report your super score on the SAT or does it just have to be your best test? Great question. On the application, it lets you list the super score, which means you can list your highest evidence-based reading and writing from one month and your highest math from the other month, and that creates a new super score. There are colleges that require you to still send the testing from the College Board website with the application, and that'll involve sending those 2 months. So even though they're from 2 different months, you'd still send both. Now, what do I mean? I could say that a lot of schools let you just self-report the scores, and then if offered admission and you know you want to matriculate with that school, then you'll have to send the official scores to confirm what you received. So what I mean is if you're applying to 10 schools regular decision, it's expensive to send 10 official scores from the College Board website. So it could be that 7 of the schools in your list will say, you know what, self-reporting is enough for us. And so you'll save money on those 7 schools. And then once you know which one of those schools you're going to, then you'll officially send it. So whatever you self-report will have to be ultimately confirmed with the official report sending once you're offered admission. Okay? What is the best way to negotiate a financial aid package after acceptance? Should only the parent be involved, or parent and child? Does the high school counselor get involved, or is that frowned upon? Wilfred, that's a great question. I would say it is more of a parent phenomenon because parents tend to know the need-based structures of their family. And I would say the student can maybe write an email, but the parent should be involved in the phone conversations. Best way to negotiate, you have to think of apples to apples, not apples to oranges. So if you're going to say to Harvard, I need more money from you because University of Hartford's offering me a full ride, that's not going to do it for them. But if you're going to say to Harvard, I really need more money for you because Princeton's offering me much more, can you match what Princeton's offering? Then there's a conversation. So the idea is that they will try to negotiate with you if there's a better package out there. They want to match because they want to yield you. They want you to matriculate. Or let's say a college, the need-based package they offered you, you were hoping for $50,000, they gave you 30. Let's just give an example. They might give you an extra $2,000 or $3,000. They're not going to give you an extra $20,000. So you have to be realistic about what that school's offering, if it's feasible for you to matriculate. Do you recommend that students revise the personal essay for different colleges? No, the personal essay can be the same for all colleges. It's the supplemental essays that are unique to each school. One last question, what if your school doesn't offer AP but offers some college level courses? Is that equivalent? Yes. The idea of taking college level courses could be dual enrollment. That's equivalent, and that showcases they are taking higher level classes, not just their regular high school grade level classes. I got a question privately. How do colleges view being part of student union, specifically being student union president? That's a great form of leadership. Editor-in-chief of the paper, president of the student body, captain of a team. These are really wonderful forms of leadership. Colleges appreciate that, as long as it's also matching really strong transcript, standardized testing. Those are the 2 main admission factors. Final question here, then Francis, I'll turn it over to you. How best for students to take lead role in college admissions versus parents? Should kids be making the calls to admissions offices versus parents? How to encourage kids to step up and actually make phone calls and emails, no texting? This is a great question, Jade. I'm happy you asked it. Students, you are in the driver's seat. Parents, you are cheerleaders. You're in the front seat, okay? Students, you are owning this process. Parents, I think you should own the financial aid process. So, calling admissions office, student. Emailing an admissions office, student. All right? I would think this is the time for students to best advocate for themselves, because in a few months, when they are 18 and in college in fall of 2021, they're on their own dealing with the registrar's office and dealing with the student housing office and dealing with the dining services. It's not, mom or dad, I need your help. I'm here next to this person and they want to talk to you. It's really you advocating for yourself. So this is a really good foray into that world. Okay. If a student has ED'd and been accepted, is it possible to wait for responses of regular decision and see what financial packages are available and then negotiate from there? No. If you're admitted ED, you're going there and you're withdrawing every other application. The only reason to apply regular decision is if you've gotten out of that ED contract because they've gapped you so many thousands of dollars that you can't afford it. And now, Francis, I turn to you and I take some water.
Hi, everyone. I want to give everyone, I want to say thank you so much, Michael Courtney, for spending your time and for giving us, gotta be mad in front of public. I want to thank everyone for being in the meeting. Hold on, let me go in the spotlight so we can all see the dog. Who wants to see the doggy? Don't log out, please. They say hello. So I do want to discuss a couple of really important things with you, very important. Number one, you should know, I even jotted down a few things so that we're all on the same page. The COVID essay, I know that I typed it into the chat several times. I want to just go through it. And what I want to do right now is just read the essay prompt so that everyone can understand. She is really cute, isn't she? So I just want to make something clear. And Michael, if you could just help support what I'm saying, it's important. Some of the kids, believe it or not, they're not using this essay as an opportunity, and it's just so surprising. So I have quite a lot of kids right now at Kweller. We do help with all aspects of just working with you on the application. Some kids just leave it blank. So Michael, can you just provide some feedback on just how that could be a mistake?
Right. So the only reason to leave it blank is if the pandemic has had zero impact on your family or personal health, and you've had nothing to do with extracurricular differences, and your grades were exactly the same as they've been all along. Chances are you've been impacted in some way that could be reason enough to write about. Now, you don't want to write about, and like I said before, you don't want to write about and complain, Zoom school is hard for me. But maybe you write, I am taking care of 3 younger siblings and their Zooms throughout the day, and my grades suffered because I was absent from more classes than usual because I physically wasn't present as I was caring for my little kids. I mean, that's a story that admission folks wouldn't know unless you wrote that. Or if a student says the internet in my apartment is very, very spotty, and with 4 of us on at the same time, I had to miss a lot of classes because we had to prioritize who could be on when. I mean, these are real world things that a lot of people experience that colleges wouldn't know unless you told them.
It's really important also remember that right now, we're writing about New York City. A lot of schools in New York State, they're going 5 days a week, they're in person. I think that it's a mistake for students to write about or to just leave that part of the application out. Just remember, as New York City, especially those of us who are in Queens, who can show me Queens? Type Queens if you're Queens. I want to see Queens. Who are my Queens people? I just want to remind all of you, Queens, we're in the epicenter. Elmhurst was the epicenter, the Elmhurst Hospital. So, and if your parent is just an essential worker, a frontliner, it's just such, thank you, my Queens people. I just want to remind you, it's just a big mistake. This is an opportunity for you to talk about how you're affected, how, I think as a Queens resident, especially to leave it blank, it's crazy. Please make sure that you use this time. And we do offer help and support at Kweller. So if you decide to go on that path, it's something that, we kind of help you just brainstorm. But I want to say truthfully, I'm just shocked when I see kids leaving this part out and not knowing what to write. It's very important. This is really a chance to be retrospective and to look at your opportunities. So keep that in mind. There's a COVID essay. It's there for a reason. So make sure, Goldie's even nodding. Do you guys see Goldie nodding? Say hi, Goldie. The other thing you should know, we're having another webinar tomorrow night. So I'm actually going to tell you about it quickly because Michael Courtney is going to be so pleased to hear this. So Michael Courtney, do you remember Tyrene Solar? Does that name ring a bell?
The name Tyrene definitely rings a bell. Tyrene rings a bell, yes. NYU?
So,
no.
She went to Northeastern, full scholarship. So listen to this, everyone. So we have a webinar. Who knows what the topic is? Who knows? Michael Courtney, you're going to be so pleasantly surprised because he actually helped her. And Tyrene got into 15 colleges. This was around 10 years ago. Tyrene was homeless. And she did not disclose that for quite some time. And she finally opened up during her college application time at Kweller Prep. And and at that point I reached out to Michael Courtney, and we did help her quite a bit with her applications and essays and reviews. So believe it or not, you're gonna be very impressed, Michael. Tyrene is now a homeowner. So she went from being homeless to being a scholarship graduate, going to college, and now she's a homeowner. So we have a really nice webinar, and I thought it was really cute to do it right like around Thanksgiving time. It was very, very heartwarming. So I'm excited to share with you that we're going to share that webinar information with you. I really hope that you sign up. All right, so keep that in mind. It's going to be Tyrene. She's going to openly discuss her journey from homeless. She lives in a homeless shelter in Harlem to where she is right now as a homeowner and an adult who's debt-free and attended a great college. So keep that in mind. So that's another one you should know. In terms of testing, I want to quickly touch on that as well. Don't dismiss how important it is to be skill set ready going into college. How many years is college supposed to be? Who can type in the box? How many years is college? Anyone? How many years is college? 4, not 14. So please make sure that you do reasonably well on the PSAT, on the SAT. Try your best, because the last thing you want is to not have the right English and math skill sets. Who wants to be in college for 14 years? Anybody? So joking aside, the last thing you want to do is take 0 credit remedial classes and be in a position where you're just wasting time. And Michael, if you could even help kind of support what I'm saying, because you are definitely very knowledgeable in this area. A lot of kids think they don't need to do well in math or reading on the PSAT and the SAT. No one's looking at it. There's quite a lot of conversation about how they just don't need the skills that are on the SAT and PSAT and ACT.
Right. So the thing is this, that colleges require these tests for many, many, many years because they thought it was a standardized way to compare students from all different curricula. So some high schools might be more competitive than other high schools. Some high schools might offer more APs. Some high schools might have very limited resources to enable students to really showcase their skills. So standardized testing was that equal factor. Then there's research that shows that the SAT, ACT does correlate to wealth, and the more you have, the better your chances of doing. Then there's controversy because certain geographic areas have more access to the test because there are more test centers. There's a lot that's out there. The reality is this: colleges get really excited about high scores. So whether or not we agree with it, whether or not we love it, whether or not we subscribe to it, the idea is that high scores do impress the schools. So here's what I say to students. If you are someone who doesn't score highly, that doesn't mean you're not smart. But if you score really highly on these exams, then you're showing admission officials, you have some intelligence here. You're a pretty bright kid. And they look at that as a way to determine if someone could be successful in college. Now, with test optional this year, admission offices are going to do research to see if the students who scored highly did better freshman year than students that didn't. But that's going to be a few years down the line. That's not going to be something you might not know if you're applying next year, for example. So I would say that look at testing also, for example, with verbal. It is a good skill to know how to be a strong reading comprehension student, right? There's nothing wrong with learning how to answer questions based on passages. There is no harm in knowing how strong vocabulary can be incorporated into really challenging reading. So I think that when it comes to the SAT, ACT, there's a value in it. Yes, we know that there are some flaws as well. Nothing's perfect in this world. But colleges have been using these as resources for decades, and I think they're either going to go back to it after the pandemic fully, or they might use it for stronger merit scholarship consideration, or they'll still have it in some capacity and not necessarily go completely test blind the way CUNY is or the UCs. The University of California system this year also went test blind. Vast majority of schools are test optional, saying you could still submit testing to us. And I believe that those students who have really high testing will still be given good consideration.
And just to be extremely clear on how this works, the majority of schools not refusing SATs and ACTs, right? I just want to be clear, because a lot of students are thinking that they don't need these exams or they don't need the scores right now. Quite a few kids are talking about how difficult it's been to even register for the SAT. So why should I even try when it's so hard to get a test center? It's happening pretty often. So I just want to understand your thoughts on this.
So yeah, registration is at a premium because there aren't as many test centers as the demand. I told my juniors in August, start registering for that February ACT now. I've never told them before to register 6 months in advance, but I had to because the September, October, December were all canceled. We're all already full at capacity across the area. So the idea is that you do want to prepare in advance and know, you know what, I'm thinking I'm going to take it in April. Why should I wait till March 1st to register? Let me register now. And yes, a test center might get closed because that community had more cases or they weren't able to open to outside. And it's very unfortunate it's happening left and right, but I wouldn't just give up on testing because colleges aren't giving up on it either. Jade, you have a good question. How early should we be taking SAT, ACT prep and timeline? And that's a really good question because I've had some kids who scored really highly in June of sophomore year, they were done with it, or September of junior year, and they were done with it. Most kids, I would say, do really highly spring of junior year or fall of senior year, which I think means the summer between sophomore and junior year is a good time to get started. What do you think, Francis?
Correct. I do. I feel that by 10th grade, by spring, you want to get the ball rolling on PSAT. I always tell the kids to avoid testing senior year. So try your best to complete all of your testing throughout your junior year. That includes SAT2s, that includes subject testing. I want to remind all of you that you can sign up for the SAT now months in advance. It might even be a good idea strategically to sign up, I would say, outside of New York City. And if anybody wants to second that in the chat, I would love to get a, yes, that's a good idea. I think it's a good idea to just explore Long Island or even upstate, or just because the city's been a little bumpy with, keeping the schools open and closed. So I would recommend, if you do sign up, it might be worth the trip to sign up an hour away from home, just so that you secure yourself into a testing center. You should definitely, I would say, if I could really give my best advice, I would say sign up 2 times. So for example, sign up now for March and May, or sign up now for May and June. This way you have a secured center. And if anybody wants to share their experience in the chat, they're welcome to do that. It's like free therapy. Okay, and tell us. But I would say that's so important. So I would highly recommend, oh, thank you so much. So New Jersey, Jersey City's right across the bridge. So just, there's an option to not test too far away. So there's something that I really enjoy doing with Michael Courtney in terms of closing up the meeting. So I am going to pretend that I am a know-it-all college junior. I know everything. And Michael Courtney is the voice of reason, and this will be a fact or fiction. And I'm going to let him know where I stand and where I feel. So I'm going to pretend. So again, I am the very bratty high school junior. I know everything, omnipotent, I know everything, don't tell me anything. So I hope you guys really enjoy this. It's a game of fact or fiction, and we're gonna go through a couple of questions. So let me put on my hat. Okay, ready? Oh, Michael, Schmeichel, I'm not gonna think about college until I'm in the 12th grade. Why am I gonna think about college right now? I am in 11. Do you know what 11 is? It's not 12.
So the college admission process is very front-loaded. If you remember, I talked about early decision, early action. These are November 1st deadlines. To get prepared for the whole process in less than 2 months of senior year, it's just not going to cut it. There's application work to do before senior year, brainstorming ideas for essays, thinking of recommendation letter suggestions, test prep. So it really is not just a senior year phenomenon.
Okay, Kweller, I know you're just trying to make money. So there's AP Bio and there's SAT2 Bio. If I'm taking AP Bio, why do I have to also take SAT2 Bio? You're just trying to sell a class.
So the AP will give you college credit if you get 4 or 5. SAT subject test is something admission folks notice even more than the AP exam. Also, subject tests, or SAT2 it used to be called, but subject tests, colleges do use this for placement purposes. So someone who scores very highly on a certain, let's say, bio subject test, there might be a chance you place out a freshman bio to take a higher level. So these are things also that to consider in the long term, not just right while you're in the throes of junior year.
Mr. Courtney, you think you're so smart. I'm smarter. I'm going to apply early decision to 6 schools. Wahahaha.
Right. So yeah, like I said before, your school counselor won't send transcripts and rec letters to 6 ED schools. They'll send to 1 ED school and 6 early action schools, but not 6 ED schools.
My plan is to pay someone to write up my college application. I'm going to sit back and chill and relax.
So you could join Lori Loughlin and Felicity Huffman behind bars, or you could realize this is your process. Are there people out there who are willing to do things for you that are not so kosher? Yes, but ethics and values, I think, go a lot further than which brand college you get into.
I have a great idea. Hear me out. I'm going to send fake scores to the colleges. They have a self-reporting section on the college application. Don't tell anyone about how amazing this feature is. You can self-report perfect scores. How are they going to know?
Right. So they wouldn't know when you apply, but once admitted, if you want to go there, they're going to say, now send the official score report. And if they see this disparity, then you just lost your seat.
My plan is to get all A's in math. Here's my plan. Does everyone want to hear my genius plan? I'm going to take pre-algebra. Then I'm going to take pre-algebra. And then I'm going to take pre-algebra. I'm going to get all A's in math on my transcript and get into a great school.
Right. So straight A's in a non-rigorous curriculum doesn't get you into the most competitive schools. Schools are looking for the more competitive curricula where you're going up to APs and AP Calculus, for example. Calculus BC if you're applying to competitive engineering schools. Physics C if you're applying to competitive engineering schools. These are things to think about, not just how can I get the best grades in the least rigorous courses.
My booby loves me. I will get grandma to write my college application. She can write 7 pages about how much she loves this Punim.
Right. So the other thing is similar is just writing an essay about grandma. Remember, this is your process. You're writing about yourself, and it's coming from your voice because they're expecting a 17-year-old to have written it, not a PhD candidate in their 30s. So it's really important, or grandma could be in the 70s. The idea is that it really is your process, and family can't bail you out of everything in life. So this is a good intro into that.
Here's my plan. After I'm accepted, I'm going to tell all the teachers what I really think of them. And I hate them. I hate every single teacher I've ever had. And I can't wait to tell them the truth after I get that acceptance letter.
So karma comes back to bite people. There's no doubt about it. But also your senior year grades matter. So if you start telling your teachers how much you're not a fan of theirs and they have to give you grades to keep your seat in those colleges, it's not looking good. On the contrary, definitely tell your school counselor and the 2 teachers who wrote your rec letters what your latest results are, getting in, not getting in, and thank them for every time you get into a school.
Kweller, you always make me do all this extra nonsense I don't want to do. I don't want to take the SAT plus the writing section. Writing, schmiting, ACT plus writing. It's optional. Do you know what optional means? Optional.
Right, so it is optional. If you're an exceptional writer, higher scores can't hurt you. If you're not a strong writer, I wouldn't waste as much time on this as I would in the actual other sections that will count for more in the process.
My plan, when it says optional on the application, I'm not going to answer any of those questions because they're optional. So I don't need this COVID essay. I don't need this additional information. I don't need to submit the resume. It's optional. Do you know what optional means? Optional. Look it up.
So you'll see in the application, there are a bunch of things with asterisks that you have to fill out and certain things without asterisks you don't have to fill out. The more complete the application looks, the better. But I would say that especially with optional essays. So for example, some schools will say, this essay is purely optional and we mean it. But why would they ask it unless they expected someone to answer it? So I tell my students, let that someone be you, and you should answer it well.
My plan is to pay full price for college. And I'm going to get into every college because I'm paying full price. Sorry, Mom, sucks for you.
Right, so it's interesting. There are some colleges out there where they do look at full pays a little bit more as an advantage than kids who might need financial aid. So some schools are what you call need sensitive or need aware. Other schools are need blind. But you don't want to take out significant debt. The federal government recommendation comes out to about $19,000 maximum of debt for 4 years, not $50,000 a year. It's hard for students to fathom what being in debt means until they're living it, and they have to pay for transportation and for clothing and for housing and for meals, plus college debt. So be very careful of what you're willing to take out. No college is worth being significantly in debt so much so that you don't want to go to grad school or that you don't want to buy a home or an apartment.
My plan is to take AP classes, advanced placement. So the more the merry. I'm going to take AP garbage, and then I'm applying to AP trash. And after I take all of those APs, I'm going to apply to the Sophie Davis program, and I will get into that program because I took a lot of APs, quantity.
So there almost is like a hierarchy within the AP world. AP Calculus, AP Physics, AP European History, AP English are construed as more rigorous classes over courses like AP Gov, AP Psychology, AP Art, unless applying to an art school. So not to demean certain APs, but the reality is that certain APs carry more cachet and weight with more selective admission.
Okay, ready? I have a master plan. I'm going to lie about my race.
Okay, so however you identify yourself is what they will note on your application. If someone identifies as a certain race and there is no substantiation of it whatsoever from within their own application, or what if they meet you with an interview, you should be very careful with how you report your own background.
My plan is to say that I love everybody. I do, I love everyone. But the truth is I really hate everyone. I have some social media. Michael, I can't hold it in. I hate it. I hate people. I'm very political. And I feel like this urge to just vent my frustration out on the internet. I have Facebook, I have Twitter, I have WeChat, I have everything under the sun. And I just want to use this opportunity to say all the mean things. Michael, do you know that there's freedom of speech? Freedom of speech. I can say whatever I want and I'm protected. Who's enjoying this? Any parents? Who's heard this before?
So what I tell people is don't put anything on social media that you wouldn't want your grandparents to see, whether it is a saying or whether it is a picture. Think, what would grandma say if she saw this? So students, you cannot post cyberbullying. You can't post a picture of you drinking from a keg. You can't post certain things that are going to put you in a really negative limelight, because whatever you put on the internet stays forever. So be very careful what you're going to put up. Or, as Francis Kweller will tell you, maybe just shut down social media for a few months while going through a very intensive admission process.
We used to do that at Kweller. We used to actually have the kids close social media. Now with Zoom and with COVID, we've taken a pause, but we used to actually have kids sign contracts, the good old days, where they would join the SAT class and they would not have social media access during the duration of the course leading to the exam. Those were really good times. I can't wait to have them back. Okay, so keep that in mind. Someone's asking.
It's a great question. Not a red flag. It's something colleges love. It's a great question,
if you
Jade.
close social media, is it a red flag? I think it's sometimes better to close it, especially if your child is a future, problem. All right. So here's my plan. I'm going to write 800 words when they ask you to write 650 words. So I'm always going to write extra. And this means Harvard, Yale, and Princeton are going to want me because I'm writing so much more. That means I'm like, Ivy League.
Until 2009, students were actually able to exceed like the 650 words. And I had students showing me 950 word essays, 900 words. And I said, no one wants to read this. It's too long. So when they say 650, they mean it. Now, colleges will literally cut you off. The Common App doesn't let you exceed 650 words because you have to type it into a text box. So make sure you actually look at the parameters. If they say 250, it's 250. If they say 650, it's 650. Don't think to yourself, it's only 632. That's okay. You don't have to seek 18 more words if you like your 632. If it's 432, you're very far off.
My plan is to visit the college admissions office every day. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send them an email. I'm going to stalk them on Twitter. I'm going to contact everyone by phone. I'm just going to spend the whole day in that rotary. So my plan is to smother them. When you love someone, smother with affection. Doesn't that work all the time? It's going to get me into NYU.
I had the admissions officer at Macaulay Honors a few years ago say to me, Michael, you need to tell, let's call her Sarah. Her name wasn't Sarah. You need to tell Sarah to back off. She's being a little bit too aggressive with her interest in our school. I knew exactly what he meant. You don't want to be that Sarah. You want to make sure that if you're demonstrating interest through reaching out to an admissions representative, it might happen once or twice. It's not a daily or weekly thing.
So this is the very last question. I hope you enjoyed this. Yes. My plan is to not study for the SAT. I'm just going to walk in. I'm going to take it cold. it's in God's hands. If I do well, I do well. If I don't, it was a divine moment. This is going to be my moment when I sit for that real test. I'm going to wake up, I'm going to get a good night's sleep and sit for that test and take it cold.
The chances of reaching the potential for what you can score on the first time you do it without any prep is really low. When Tom Brady wins a Super Bowl, it's not because of a lack of practice. It's because he practiced and practiced and practiced to get to that real peak in his life.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the thank yous. Okay, so I am no longer that student. Thank you for correcting me and me trying to show you that I know what I'm doing. Please remember that these moments, and joking aside, are actually really what goes through the kids' minds. And I actually hear this on a regular basis. And sometimes I gasp for air listening to this. So just remember, we heard it straight from the expert today. Michael, Courtney, we are getting so many thank yous into the chat. Parents, we can go off mute. Let me change the settings right now. So you can unmute yourselves. So please type, you can say thank you. We can do a group thank you. And it's been many, many years of hosting this. I'm 38 now. We started 18, so 20 years later, here we are. Who would have ever thought on Zoom? We've adapted to the change.
Yes, exactly.
So just in terms of adapting, there are a lot of classes that we offer at Kweller. There are a lot of preps and programs. And as many of you know, the tutors are great. They want to work. So definitely keep that in mind as well. Thank you for all the thank yous. I like them. I like my, pretend hat as well. And I please feel free to go off mute. You can unmute yourself. I just changed the settings. So you can say thank you. And this was really great. And I just want to remind you, we have a lot of good workshops, spread the word. So we're registering kids right now for the upcoming class at Kweller, March 2021 SAT. Surprise, our Sunday morning class is already sold out. So I guess Sundays 8 to 12 were a big hit. So we do have openings for the other sessions. That one session's already sold out. But, we hope that we can have you for the others. All right. Thank you, Wilfred. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, guys. Feel free to go off mute and we'll say thank you.
All right. Happy
Thank
Thanksgiving.
you. Thank you so much,
Thank
Michael.
you.
Happy
Great, Francis.
Happy
Thank you so much.
Thanksgiving.
You're
Thank
welcome,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thank
Oh,
you.
so
Bye.
cool. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Francis.
Let's see if Goldie's here. Goldie, are you here? Goldie, come, little baby. Come, Goldie. Goldie's gonna say thank you to the remaining people here. Okay, Goldie, come, my baby, come. Come here, my Goldie, my little doggy. Ready, Goldie? Ready, Goldie. Goldie, say hello. Ready? Goldie is gonna conclude this meeting. Goldie,
She's
ready?
so cute. Does she miss
Yes.
working? Does she miss working?
She's I don't think she's thrilled being in a house with a 4 and 5-year-old. I think that she really misses her work environment. She does have, she's a working dog. Look, see that? She's definitely,
Yeah, she's adorable.
She's here. She's here. And interestingly enough, this is my work ring. See, I'm married to Kweller. See that? See? I mean, both. A human also, but work as well. Anyway, so I thought that was funny. Goldie, look, you're a working dog. Yes.
She would get into Harvard, that's for sure. Any Ivy League.
I'll tell you something. Goldie went to Yale, and Yale University remembered Goldie. When I emailed them the following year, they said, don't forget to bring Goldie. We can't wait to see the dog. Goldie has actually peed on every Ivy League, just about every single school's lawn. This dog has marked her territory at every major college in the United States. Yeah, including NYU. We visited St. John's, Macaulay Honors. Goldie's had a good life. Goldie.
Thank you so much, Francis. You're amazing. It was a great presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening. Thank you, everyone, for adapting
we'll
to the
see you tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow.
Oh yeah, that's going to be a really nice webinar. I'm excited. It'll be a nice pre-Thanksgiving moment.
Yes,
okay.
Thank you so much, Francis. Have
Thank
a good
you,
night.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye,
Francis.
everyone. Thank you, guys. Goldie, say bye. Bye. Bye, Goldie. Goldie, you want to push the button? Do you want to do that? I don't know. Maybe I'll let her push it. What do you think? I'm going to take a picture of the chat box because that's so cool. Come, Goldie, we're going to take a picture of the chat. Ready? Hold on. This one. Yay. All right, thank you guys. I'm gonna try to get the dog to close up the meeting. Ready, Goldie? Okay, your job is to hit the end button. Are you ready? Okay, you can do this, Goldie. Here, ready? Okay, here's her paw. Who wants to see this? Ready? Okay, now oh my gosh, she's using the mouse. Goldie, you're a genius.